Well, just in time for St. Patrick's Day, crowds are coming by the dozens to get an up-close view at what some say is a piece of Irish folklore.
Some people in the
Caju Cafe
say a leprechaun is taking up residence in their neighborhood. A leprechaun.
Curiosity leads to large crowds in
the Caju Cafe.
Many of you bringing binoculars, camcorders, even camera phones to take pictures.
To me, it look like
ML.
To me, all I gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else in
the soul of Detroit?
Say yeah!
You ass interrogator, Detroit right in my face. It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Albert?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric with our annual check-in show with Sean Mann of DCFC. For those of you who care about sports, authentic good times, and a game that some people call football, but folks around here still call soccer. We're working on them because we really haven't had football here since the Portsmouth Lions moved to Detroit some 60 or 70 years ago. We will be checking in on the Detroit City Futbol Club. Today may be the most epic day in Detroit City Futbol Club history. So, of course, we had to distract Sean because he doesn't have enough to do with the Columbus crew coming. So, Sean, thanks for making time for being here.
No, thanks for having me.
And if you're watching us on our live broadcast on YouTube or on Facebook, you can see I'm sitting in Marc's seat because Marc is not here. He, as you know, hates soccer. He loves Russian oligarchs, but he hates soccer as a Chelsea fan. So he's not here. He's weeping for the Blues, who I think will not repeat as Champions League champions. So I know I lost half you with all that right there. So let's go right to Sean Mann so we can or Sean Windsor so we can chase the other half of our audience.
I was just going to say we want to lose everybody.
Yeah, so Sean's back, and
it's good to be back. By the way, the other Sean here pulled up in a nice company car with the DCFC logo on the side.
It's our Chevy Blazer, our official car.
Is it wrapped? Do you have a custom wrap? Oh, so if people see you at stop signs, you roll down your window and give out free tickets and stuff.
Yeah. Just wave, honk.
And beers and kick a soccer ball into their back seat. Yep. Wow, okay, so keep your eyes peeled for the DCFC Chevy Blazer. That's pretty impressive. I think the last time I was in any kind of branded car, I was working at Channel 4, so this was a long time ago and it wasn't for very long, and they had all their cars were made up with the Detroit sports teams because back then it was April and the D was their big thing, so they had a Detroit Red Wings Jeep Commander. They had like some sort of Jeep, maybe a Compass or a Patriot that was made up for the Tigers, and one was made up for the Red Wings. And now, Red Wings are done. There was a Pistons one too. Pistons done. Red Wings about to be done. Tigers, maybe they're kind of coming back. And DCFC has moved up. I think last time we had you on, you guys had just salvaged some sort of league because the other league wasn't going to make it, and now you are in this, you're on the doorstep of greatness. You're about to cross the threshold into big-time dome stadium and monster truck rallies and
Turf.
Cheerleaders, and yeah.
No, it's been a wild journey. Someday I'll write a memoir that like 5 people will find interesting, but just one turn after another, and DCFC somehow just keeps climbing every step of the way.
Yeah, it's amazing, and they really are on the threshold of something amazing, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and ask Sean what he knows about the other would-be soccer impresario in this town. I shouldn't say the other would-be because Sean actually is a soccer impresario, but Dan Gilbert has been making some noise about bringing Major League Soccer to Detroit for some time. Then we heard that he might be buying a Premier League club. And while all this is going on, rising and falling, all this other stuff, building stadiums, moving to Ford Field, all that other stuff, the Sean who's with us here actually has brought MLS soccer to Detroit, but not in the way you might think. So stand by for that while we say a big thanks to our sponsors, the people who make it possible for us to be here. And if we could increase their rates, we may end up building our own stadium or maybe some sort of podcasting studio. I don't know, but first things first. David Hall and Hall Financial is the guy you need to call if you're looking to refinance or get a mortgage. You can call Hall 866-CALL-HALL. That's CALLHALL. I know there's one extra letter there, but just press it anyways. Nothing will happen. You can sign up for your free 5-minute mortgage review and your chance to win Drew's tickets in the Champions Club on April 20th. So you've got to act fast. But even if you miss that deadline, there's always a great deal at Hall Financial. They can help you tap into your home equity to unlock tens of thousands of dollars. Call 866-CALL-HALL now to register to win Drew's tickets. But if you're just looking for a good deal, you can contact them anytime. When you contact them, let them know you heard about them from the Soul of Detroit. And you can also find a link to their website at our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. Another network-wide sponsor we have to thank is Luke Nowacki, because he's the guy at Pinnacle Wealth Strategies who will help you get through these troubled times, because overreaction is not the strategy for the long-term investor. Neither is burying your head in the sand and hoping it all turns out for the best. You can call our friend Luke Nowacki at Pinnacle Wealth. That's 248-663-4748 for rational financial advice. Get advice. Get a strategy. Call Luke Nowacki at Pinnacle Wealth, 248-663-4748, because when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc. Member FINRAS-IPC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
We're also brought to you by the Caju Cafe. We'll tell you a little bit more about them during Room 7609. Our new wave music feature, because if you really love music, the Caju Cafe is not just a place for great food and great times. They always have great music. We will tell you what's coming up at the Caju a little bit later in the show, but we want to get right to Sean, because this is a man who has been very, very busy. And the last time I saw you, you guys were in a new league, and you were maybe second or third tier, was it? I mean, you were moving up, and soccer's kind of weird here. It takes a European model where to get to the big leagues, the national governing board has to essentially say it's okay for you to compete in this league, and this league is okay. And they're really difficult to deal with, which you may or may not want to talk too much about, but somehow you've overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at that point I've been involved in a few lawsuits involving the mess that is U.S. soccer. And so, for those folks that actually follow like world soccer, the rest of the world has this really novel system where it's promotion relegation, that if you win, kind of like similar like the baseball, there's the different tiers, right? And if you win the third division, you move up to the second division. And conversely, if you lose the second division, you move down. And we don't have that in America. Every league is independently owned and they don't work together. But yet somehow U.S. Soccer, the organization, designates a first division, a second division, third division. So up until November, we were in the third division of pro soccer. And that league was faltering. And somewhat miraculously, we were able to bring on a new partner, raise the capital to make the move up to the second division. And financially, we were already there. We account for more than half of all the attendance in the third division. We had set the new American Pro Soccer record. We went 364 days without losing a game, 27 games, undefeated. So we needed better competition. We needed to be at a higher level. And so we made that jump this offseason, and we're now at USL Championship, which is the second level of American soccer, just below Major League Soccer. And, I think anytime you make a transition, there's concern about, like, is this the right place for us? Are we ready for this? And, I think what we proved is our mantra is, like, we belong. Like, we're the Vegas bookmakers, and we're at a level now where, like, there's a lot of betting on our games. Vegas bookmakers has finishing next to last in the league. We're a month and a half in the season, and we're in fourth place. Attendance-wise, even though despite this weather, we're right there towards the top. TV viewership, we're second in the league. We're setting the pace already at the second level.
Well, it's amazing because this is a team that started playing games on the field at Cass Tech High School, eventually moved to Keyworth Stadium in Hamtramck, where I think the capacity is somewhere around 7,000.
Yeah,
is that right?
7,200. Yep.
So you guys started packing, basically just playing other teams in the Midwest. And then the leagues come and go. You guys jumped around a little bit, got to a point where you're now paying the players more than just beer money, traveling, taking flights, going all over the country, putting up trophies, all very well and good, but still just kind of, more minor league soccer. Now, second division, and for folks who don't follow this, first division is what we would consider to be the pros, right? That'd be the major leagues.
Major leagues, yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are right there. I mean, you're AAA baseball right now, getting ready to play MLB.
Different than AAA in the sense that we are, fully professional, and like we have a CBA, like a union, players union, and it's not bus rides to Winston-Salem. Like every weekend we were just in Atlanta last weekend. We're going to Hartford this weekend. We started the season in San Antonio.
Flying first class?
Yeah, no, not quite. But,
it's on their own plane, so all the seats are first class. Yeah.
Yeah, but we in amongst our competition, a good number of teams are owned by like major league teams. San Antonio Spurs own the San Antonio soccer team. Tampa Bay Rays own the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
You'd think with those Spurs they would pop the balls, but they don't wear those for the games, right?
Yeah. So no, it's just stepped up a notch. Every game's televised. Nationally on ESPN, but locally we televise pretty much every game on TV 20. So yeah.
And I saw that one of your most recent games was just on ESPN.
Yeah, we had our first ever nationally televised game Friday night on ESPN Deportes, which we won, and we still had a good number of people showing up, even though it was 41 and a driving rain. It was, this is our 10th anniversary this year, and it just feels like every game is somehow historic in its own right. Just in a whole new chapter, whole new higher level for us.
So. One of the things that I wonder about is, and every year I think those of us who love the team worry about some big shot coming in and saying, okay, you've proven it can be done, so now we're going to do it. It's Adult Swim now. Get all the kids out of the pool. And for a long time, and I guess probably the last 4 or 5 years, there was talk that Dan Gilbert was going to, first of all, build a stadium. He got the failed jail there at Gratiot and Griswold, I think, or Brush or St. Antoine, at any rate, right by the courthouse. He was going to tear that down, build a gateway project where we're going to have this beautiful stadium, 25 to 30,000 feet. It was going to be an architectural miracle. It was going to host concerts. It's going to be the kind of stadium that you see in places like Toronto and I imagine Columbus, which is a big city. People don't realize Columbus, Ohio is bigger than Detroit by a considerable amount, and they have some major league facilities, and of course they have a pro college football team, but that's another story. And this was going to happen, and then it didn't happen, and then they were going to move to Ford Field, and they were going to play Major League Soccer at Ford Field, and I think maybe the Illiches were involved, and all the billionaires who make things happen downtown and get all the breaks. We're going to bring pro soccer to Detroit, and it was going to happen, and then we haven't heard anything. And then just in the last month or so, we hear that Dan Gilbert is part of a group that's trying to buy Chelsea, which is one of the most valuable soccer clubs in the world. It's based in London. It was owned by a Russian oligarch who's now being forced to sell. And so now Dan Gilbert's going to England. As you can tell from this long-winded setup, nobody knows what the hell Dan Gilbert's going to do. What are you hearing? What is going on?
Yeah,
and in the meantime, you're bringing pro soccer to Detroit.
Yeah, I think we've taken the approach for quite a while that we control what we can control, and we're going to just continually keep building. And, DCFC is going to be Detroit soccer team. If anyone wants to challenge that, then, we'll have a conversation. But we're going to just keep doing what we're doing, and we have a rabid fan base that supports this club, has invested in this club and made it what it is. In terms of the MLS, I think it's interesting how things have evolved since 2016 when they first announced MLS, the MLS of Detroit, and then by 2018 they pulled the plug on it. They did the math then, and the math hasn't gotten any better. That there is very questionable economics around building a $300 million venue in downtown Detroit, and that is what MLS is looking for. And so that led to the pivot to Ford Field, and Ford Field is just not set up for soccer, and it wouldn't work. And I think when you look at the landscape now of MLS, they're at 29 teams. It's pretty much a lock that Las Vegas will be Team 30. And so the running assumption is that with the World Cup coming to North America in 26, that the league will add 31 and 32 before 26, or as part of that. If you look at the markets, San Diego, Phoenix, Sunbelt cities are probably the front runners. Detroit doesn't really have the demographics that MLS is looking for. Where MLS does best is even Columbus has struggled, but like Cincinnati, Columbus, like cities where they're not competing with the 4 other major sports. So that like slightly notch below. Chicago Fire plays at Soldier Field. They're playing a game tonight. We will outdraw the Chicago Fire tonight. Easy. It struggles in northern established historic legacy sports towns. So it's not a slam dunk here. Now, the one caveat would be, and Charlotte just got an MLS team, is with those last 2 spots, presumed spots, in the day it's a club, and they want, the right owners in that club. And, Dan Gilbert definitely meets that criteria. So, it's up to Dan what the interest is in terms of soccer here. But Chelsea, that's shocking.
And that would be a $1 billion club, maybe $2 billion to buy that club, right?
For an MLS?
For Chelsea. No.
Chelsea.
If he bought that. I mean, MLS club, he'd probably have to put up, a couple $100 million. But to buy Chelsea, that's one of the world famous
my understanding
soccer teams.
Yeah, my understanding the bids are coming in north of $3 billion for Chelsea. And MLS right now, the assumption is the expansion fee for Team 30s could be around $400 million, and then another $200-300 million for a stadium. There's probably a reason all the owners who are bidding on Chelsea are Americans. 4 times as many Americans get up and watch Premier League on Saturday morning than they do MLS during primetime TV. It is such a cultural brand. It is so enticing, it's exciting, right? It is really the heavy hitters of global sports is the Premier League, and that is Chelsea's one of the biggest brands now. So it's enticing. MLS and Premier League are 2 different worlds, totally separate.
So has Dan Gilbert given up on soccer in Detroit? Should we be expecting no more grandiose plans for a major stadium here in the city?
You'd have to ask them. I would not anticipate anybody's looking to build a $300 million stadium here in Detroit.
Sure.
I don't think there's any economics that support it.
The drawing was nice. Do you remember the drawing?
Well, it was a bit contentious because they used pictures of our fans and our branding in it.
That's true.
That's true. So, but it's a nice drawing. I mean, but there's a history of a lot of nice drawings about projects around Detroit.
Absolutely. That's what I remember about that, though, was the drawing.
Yeah, one of my favorites was, and this is classic Detroit City Council, back in the early 2000s, City Council told the Maroons, we need a plan for the train station or we're going to order its demolition. In fact, we are going to knock it down and send you the bill. And they said, we're serious this time. We talk about this all the time. At this time, we're going to tear down Tiger Stadium. We're going to get Michigan Central deep. We're going to clear the blight up. No recourse. We've had it. You're on the clock. And so the Maroons threw together a intermodal transport facility, and they came in with these renderings by a pretty respectable firm, McIntosh Porras. And I knew one of the principals a little bit, and he seemed to be a very, very sincere and genuine person. They put together, the train station is redone and Roosevelt Park is refurbished, and there are lights projected up to the sky, and you're like, oh wow, what are you going to say? Intermodal transport. And everybody's like, well, what's that? It's when you have modals that enter and they port things by trans, and we're like, okay. I don't know what that means, but they put some renderings out there, and they clearly spent some, and they didn't do another damn thing about it. And then, of course, we had Kilpatrick saying he was going to turn into the police headquarters, which he didn't. And so this notion of taking sites and properties in Detroit and putting out a gorgeous rendering that is now going to be there, and people sit there and they say, oh, well, I better start saving my money so I can get season tickets in a year or two. The only thing that's going to happen to your money if you're saving for season tickets is it's going to collect interest.
May I quibble with the analogy a little bit, though? Because the train station actually is getting transformed. Tiger Stadium is gone, and what's in its place? I mean, unless I don't want to open that can of worms. It's kind of nice. I mean, but there are kids that play on really, really great little league fields there. There are condos or
it's
townhomes
turf
surrounded, and You know,
but to go back
that's
to
a
that
separate issue. But the way they remade that corner and the way they were making the train station right now is actually kind of
sure. But
awesome.
But let's keep things on the timeline here. City
20
Council
years,
said,
yeah.
"Get your ass in here next week, or we're going to tear it down."
Oh, I know.
They
but
came back with the rendering, and then City Council's like, "Okay, let's get some pizzas," and then it takes multiple because
So
the
Sean,
difference
20
between,
years from now, right?
Yeah. So are we going to have
We'll
this
have
$300 million
MLS.
stadium? And
Yeah, 20 years.
I have a hard time seeing us at Keyworth in 20 years, with our natural progression of things. So, I think that's one of the things that excites us about our current league is you're seeing teams who the league is stable enough that you're seeing teams building, soccer specific venues across the league, 50, 60, $70 million stadiums that seat 10, 12,000 people. And so, there's definitely a higher bar than where we're at right now. And so, I think there are going to see, a soccer specific venue in the city, at some point.
That's pretty exciting, right? I mean,
it's something, certainly that we have an eye towards, but that being said, we're making the most of Keyworth. We love Keyworth. It's an awesome historic venue. It's romantic. It's fun, but it is not on the same par as other venues in our league, and we know that.
Well, and here's the difference between billionaires and guys from the neighborhood who put together a soccer team. When you needed to raise money to refurbish Keyworth, for those who don't know it, it was a civil works project that was put together during the Roosevelt administration. Some might think it's Teddy, but it was actually Franklin. It's not that old. And it's in Hamtramck, and right next to it is one of the last Negro League baseball stadiums that's also being refurbished separately. But when you guys needed to raise money for that, you offered people an investment opportunity, whereas the folks who want to build these $300 million stadiums also turn to the public, but kind of with a gun in their hand, which they put to our head, and then we put up most of the money, and there's no return on our investment, or very little, or it's hard to check, whereas you guys, I think, paid 30 or 35% back to investors. I mean, as one of those investors, I think it was one of the best deals I ever made in my life. I wish you guys would do it again.
Yeah, no, we paid everybody back.
Ahead of time?
Yeah, 2 years ahead of time with a set return. And it worked out really well. And, one of the things about Keyworth is, it was the first WPA project down here in Michigan. Technically the stadium had been slated for demo. Most of it had been condemned when we stepped in. But, with the work we did and then with the folks at the Negro League field work they're doing, we've actually now created a conservancy. Ralph Wilson Foundation and even the state has helped support. And so, we're really creating a very unique, historic, athletic complex that also serves the community. Keyworth is so there's at least over 75 pro soccer venues in the country. Keyworth is the only one that's open to the public. So, if you go there right now, you can kick a ball around. It is the only one that is not closed off.
And it's a home field for Hamtramck High Schools, Hamtramck Public High Schools.
Yeah,
so kids are playing there.
Yeah, and there's multiple semi-pro, Sunday men's league teams that play there as well. It is an incredibly active community public space. It's one of the things U.S. Soccer doesn't like about it. It also creates a lot of wear and tear on the facility for us to deal with. So, we constantly keep pumping money into it just to make it functional. It's when you're in there, it feels like Detroit, right? It is concrete, it's wood benches, it's next to a rail yard with the GM Hamtramck factory right there on the horizon.
The call to prayer, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
Cheap beer.
Yeah, we've we still keep our prices down even with this move. Ticket prices didn't go up with the move up. We're trying to be the most affordable, accessible sporting event in Detroit, and putting out a winning product.
So before we get to how you got to level 2, what are you hearing about Dan Gilbert? Is he done? Is this on the back burner? Do you still wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh, shit, what's Gilbert doing? If you ever did that in the first place. But
yeah, I mean, our understanding, in conversations in American soccer, MLS, is that, the MLS Detroit bid, is not active. I think as long as there's billionaires attached to it, there's always going to be a faint pulse to it. So again, we just focus on what we control.
So talk to us about that. So just to let you know, today is Tuesday. Tonight, DCFC plays the Columbus Crew, which is an MLS team as part of the, we call it the U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, U.S. Open Cup is...
so this is everybody plays. This is like the Yankees could play a single A baseball team, and if they beat the Yankees, then they have a chance. I mean, this is what they do in England. We don't really do stuff like this here with other sports. Only with football, soccer, it's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And it's been around since 1915. It took a couple years off because of COVID, so it's back up. But if you can imagine, any men's amateur team can enter it, and they actually start playing in the fall. And then the top 20, 30 of those qualified to start playing in the spring. They played around. Then the pro teams start getting layered in. And so we won a couple weeks ago in our first round, which was the second round. And now the worst MLS teams joined in this round. And then the last MLS teams joined the next round. So basically from this point on, it's all MLS, but teams coming in. But yeah, this idea that you got MLS, all the pro teams, and then the top amateur teams in the country in this kind of March Madness tournament is pretty special. And tonight is kind of the culmination for us, and that, not culmination, but it's been 10 years in the making, right? That we finally have a chance to go toe-to-toe with an MLS team on a field of our making.
Yeah, how did you get a home field gig? I mean, you guys are the underdog. I don't think that's disrespectful to say that.
Yeah, it was a coin toss. And so, it's great for us, right? It's like a 6-figure payday. We should have, I don't know if we'll get to a full sellout, but we're trending to an absolutely packed house. And it's great for us as a small business. It makes up for the fact that every home game we had so far has been 40 and rainy, worse attendance than we're used to. So, but then, we've created an incredibly unique environment, match day experience that is renowned around American soccer. And this is the first time we've gotten to host an MLS team in that atmosphere. And I was listening to Sirius XM this morning, and they were talking about this match. It is the one that everyone's highlighted to see our fans with an MLS team. It should be, bonkers.
Do you see a path? You mentioned earlier that the level you're at right now, there's some 10 to 12,000 seat stadiums. Do you see a path for that, especially with the fan base? That there are another 6, 7, 8,000 fans or so that would regularly fill up on top of what you get at Keyworth?
Yeah, I think it's something we have our eyes on. People approach us over the year. Even going back to Cast Tech, people approach us. I think it has to make sense. But also, as much as I love Keyworth, there's limitations, right? The Negro League field got rehabbed, which we were incredibly supportive of, and we're glad that's happened. But our parking spots went from 450 down to 50, and so we have a total of 175 parking spots for a 7,000 seat venue. So, there are limitations to Keyworth as a venue. As we continue to grow, it's something that, we had to get serious about.
Well, one reason a lot of people think the Illiches were done with Tiger Stadium were things like concessions and suites, but also parking. Yep. You guys, that's a huge revenue stream, and you guys are getting not even a trickle out. In fact, when I go to games, I just go park on the street and walk over. It's one of my favorite things to do is just walk through the neighborhoods, and kids are playing. To me, it feels like what it would have been like to go to Ebbets Field or Forbes Field or Wrigley Field. Still kind of like that. Oh, it's so commercial. And what it was like to walk to Tiger Stadium when I was a kid. It's just a great experience. But in terms of a going concern, when you see me park for free and walk over there, you're thinking, okay, he's not buying a beer in our place. He's not paying us for parking. It's a line item where you guys have zero.
It's not even that as much for us. It is more the amenity of it, really. Losing those 300 spots, it's 300 people that are either I don't feel comfortable leaving my car in the neighborhood, which they should feel fine. There's no issues, in Hamtramck. But yeah, it just puts a strain on the neighborhood as well. So it's more of the amenity. Our ticket prices are $15, day of $12 in advance. It's hard for us to justify charging $50 parking like you see downtown, Right. It's not us. It doesn't match up with where we're at. So, it's more the amenity of it.
So how did you get to the second level, which is, again, on the doorstep of Major League Soccer? I imagine part of it is because we know how these leagues work. You found somebody with some really deep pockets to get involved, because if you don't have somebody who has a pretty sizable bank balance, no matter how successful you are, these soccer leagues are not gonna let you in.
Yeah, I mean, U.S. Soccer has requirements, and the leagues themselves have requirements, and so you have to have somebody who owns at least 35% equity of the club, who has a certain net worth at each level. And for us, it was miraculous. and I'm not being exaggerating, but by mid-December, there was clear signs that our current league was faltering. Bills weren't being paid. Teams weren't paying dues. It was teetering, and so we weren't in a position where we were going to risk the future of DCFC for a league. And so, in the span of 6 weeks, one of our oldest friends in Detroit put us in touch with college buddy of his out of state who was familiar with us, loved what we were doing, and wanted to be a silent partner. And he's a relatively normal guy who has no profile at all, and wants to remain anonymous because he's not involved in the day-to-day of the club. He's just supportive, and so just a relatively normal guy with a net worth of $100 million or more. But other than that, pretty regular dude. We couldn't have asked for a better scenario because, I mean, honestly, that is how it landed. And we pinch ourselves with how it worked out. And Todd, Alex, myself, the guys who started the club, we're still the ones running it. We run the day to day, and it's been pretty exciting.
But a rich guy with a shitty team is not going to get to the second level.
No, you can buy your way in, but I would say that there is degrees of the leagues are discerning about who they want, and it's a club, right? And they're discerning about who they want in the organization. And frankly, we've been performing at that level of a second division team for years now. It was really just a matter of the stars kind of lining up.
So where does it go next? I mean, what happens? I mean, after you beat Columbus tonight, and that's going to happen, so we're good with that. What happens next season? I mean, it seems like every year you guys make a step up, and then it looks like, oh my God, the floor is going to fall out beneath them, and then somehow you guys right the ship and end up higher. Well, you're now at a point where if you come back to this show next year and you say, well, this second division thing, people started getting a little freaky, and we started getting a little nervous, and yeah, we're going to be playing the Cosmos on Saturday because now we're an MLS team. So I guess it's weird how that happened. I don't know. I mean, how many weird dudes are you guys going to run into in December who are worth, 7 figures or no, it's got to be 10 or 11 figures, right? No, sorry, 8 or 9 figures, and say, yeah, you knuckleheads can keep doing what you do because it seems to work.
I mean, all I can tell is have people tune in because I think this has been one of the more wild rides in American sports, certainly American soccer. From where we were to where we are, we just keep pushing ourselves and taking on bigger challenges, and and we've been getting more and more, I think, credibility nationally, internationally, and hopefully locally as well. And we're seeing that higher TV ratings, and we're getting more interest. We just need. Not to make excuses, but we need better weather. Jesus Christ. We've had 6 games. We've yet to have a game about 45. Yeah.
The weather's been awful. By the way, isn't there, I'm trying to remember, isn't there an example in Portland, right? Is it a somewhat similar? They started, I know they didn't start out maybe at equivalent Cast Tech, but.
No one has started out at the Cast Tech level. Right. So there's 2 MLS. Portland was in the NASL, and then they survived throughout the 80s playing indoor and various semi-pro leagues. FC Cincinnati was in USL, our current level, and they went up to MLS. Same with Nashville. There's been a handful of teams now that have gone from USL up to MLS. But, when you talk about 5 friends starting a team, you have to go back to 1800s Victorian England to see comparables of this kind of rise. So
yeah, this is usually where when Hollywood does this, Shawn is sitting there, and then Rob Lowe comes in and says, "Great job, kid, but now we're taking over."
I do find myself finding the whole new genre of entrepreneur, imposter, fraud miniseries. I find watching those and being oh man, that hits a little close to home. Yeah.
Well, here you are. God bless you. Tell folks how they can not only get access to tonight's game by TV, radio, buy a ticket, but how they can get involved for the rest of the season.
Yeah, tonight's game's on ESPN Plus. There's still some general admission tickets. I think everything else is sold out. DETCityFC.com. And, for us, this is kind of the springboard. We, if you're jumping in right now, it's a good time. We're fourth in the league or in the conference, despite all the odds. We probably have half the payroll of the other teams in the league, but, we're just doing great. And, we're going to make a mark tonight, I think. I don't know if Columbus knows what's coming for him. So
if you missed out making a fortune on that Leicester City bet a few years ago, you might want to be looking at Detroit City with your odds maker. They even have a coach with an accent. That seems to be a real sign of maturity.
Very charming Englishman. That's that's when you made it as an American soccer team.
That's it. So Det City FC to get tickets to find out what's going on. As it gets warmer, I'll be getting out to some of those games. And Sean, keep up the great work. Keep pulling those miracles because it's just exciting to see what you're able to do while the billionaires who talk don't seem to get anything done.
Yeah. No, and come on out, experience it for yourselves tonight. If food trucks are your thing, like Sean, come on out, and we got a full slate of them tonight. So
all right, let's hear it for the beignets.
Yep.
Which is not a French team. It's good. Go out there, you'll see for yourself. So Joe, let's hit that geek of the week.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So in Marc's absence, Joe Zuver has stepped up to keep us on track. So we appreciate Joe being here. We would never hit the Geek of the Week because this week's Geek of the Week have already been hit pretty hard, and it's by something they ate. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has begun investigating Lucky Charms after more than 100 people allege that the culturally insensitive cereal caused nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Well, as you know, this show is in part about journalism trying to get to the truth, doing some investigative reporting. So we reached out to General Mills, which makes this Irish-bashing breakfast food, and asked them what's going on. And their response was, as you might have guessed, it's Lucky Charms. What did they expect? So hungover people expecting culinary delights from a box of styrofoam and fake mushrooms or fake marshmallows that look like mushrooms, who are now complaining about nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Really, what did you expect from a box of Lucky Charms? In fact, if you didn't get that, you might be suing them for false advertising. So you are our Geeks of the Week.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
Welcome to room 7609, where we take a look back at new wave music. Sometimes we find a gem that you never heard before, from a band you never heard before, that becomes something that you just can't get out of your head. It becomes maybe one of your new favorites. For me, that was learning that Duran Duran really liked Japan and listening to Japan, and now that's one of my favorite new wave bands. Or sometimes what we do is we go ahead and we take a band that you know and love and find a B-side or something that no one had heard before, and we put that out there for you to listen to. This segment is brought to you by Caju Cafe, where there's always something great going on. Caju Cafe is the pride of the East Side. Every Monday is Open Blues Jam and Muscle Madness. Tuesdays is Funk Night, and Wednesdays is karaoke. This Thursday, Billy Brandt and the Sugaries. This Friday, Jangophile, Evan Perry, Audrey Kubat. Saturday, it's Pazman Super Session. Sunday is RJ Spangler's Planet D Nonate and the Marge's Bar Band. For more information on all the great things going on at the Caju Cafe, which of course includes pinball, feather bowling, great food, beer garden's getting ready to open up for the summer, and anyways, you'll see me out at the Garage Bar. Go to cajucafe.com. That's CADIEUX. CAFE, cajucafe.com. So this week, as you know, I'm really big on the Smiths and New Order and all the other great new wave bands. I'm also a huge Duran Duran fan. And if you do any research into Duran Duran, which I'm sure most of you do, it's probably how you spend most of your free time, you'll find out that a little band named Cockney Rebel was a huge influence on them. In fact, they cover a Cockney Rebel tune regularly. When they were new and exciting, and every once in a while, I think they trot out this cover band or this cover song when they hit the road. So we are going to treat you to a little tune called "Make Me Smile," and then Shawn and I are going to have a very in-depth discussion about its merits, which I think is really the only reason why Shawn comes here is to hear some new music and to give us some insights.
I'm sorry, I was just reading the rundown.
Oh, well,
I wanted to know what the show is about.
It's about an hour and a half that you wish you had back by the time you're done listening to it.
Is it an hour and a half? Have we stretched out to that long?
The way we're going, yes.
Okay.
Joey, hit it!
You've done it all. You've broken every code. Pulled the rebel to the floor. You spoke the game, no matter what you say. But only metal, what a ball. Blue eyes, blue eyes. How can you tell so many lies? Come up and see me, make me smile. I'll do what you want, running wild. There's nothing left, all gone and run away. Maybe you'll tarry for a while. It's just a test, a game for us to play. Win or lose, it's hard to smile. Resist, resist. It's from yourself, you have to hide. Oh, come up and see me to make me smile. I'll do what you want, running wild. There ain't no more. You've taken everything from my belief in Mother Earth. Can you ignore my faith in everything? 'Cause I know what faith is and what it's worth. Away, away. And don't say, maybe you'll try to come up and see me, to make me smile. I'll do what you want, just run wild.
So that's Cockney Rebel with Make Me Smile, Come Up and See Me, which has been covered by no less a new wave icon than Duran Duran, and also Erasure. There's over 120 bands who have covered this tune, and it was the B-side of The Reflex, one of Duran Duran's bigger hits. I think it's a catchy little tune. You know, kind of like the start and stop. It's got that nice melody. I wouldn't say it's terribly new wavy. You know, it's not even electric guitar in there.
I was trying to think of who it reminded me of.
Well, there's something about the way his voice is.
Yeah, Lou Reed somehow.
Yeah, where he distorts his voice.
But there was, yeah.
Yes, I know it'll come to me after we sign off. But there's somebody else who's sung a tune like that where they intentionally draw out their voice to make a point, and it's not Iggy. It could be Lou Reed. Is probably not a bad guess. Someone in that
not
genre.
Quite, but yeah, it's of that time. Yeah.
Yeah, like post punk sort of New Yorkie type of thing. But
exactly.
But yeah, but it's interesting look at a band that influenced a lot of great bands. They themselves did not have a very long career. The version you may have heard of Cockney Rebel may be called Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel, because Steve Harley's ego was such that other members of the band decided they were, they got better things to do with their time. And one of his songs was designed, it was actually one of their hits, was designed as sort of a revenge song that he wrote and recorded after most of the people left the band, to basically say, we got something good going here. I'm sorry you didn't recognize it and you split, so take that. So Cockney Rebel, I guess he didn't brook any rebellions himself.
No.
So a little irony. Maybe that's the new wave portion. Anyways, we are always looking for great tunes to play here. I'm going to stretch things out coming up to, as people know, I have a pretty broad definition of new wave, but I think we're going to try and get into what I would call odd wave, post wave, coming up. Looking at bands like They Might Be Giants, Soul Coughing, Cake, some stuff that's probably just outside the new wave framework.
I like Cake,
but have that. Cake is great. Cake is, I love Cake, and the band's good too.
Yeah.
And of course, Soul Coughing kind of came after new wave. It's sort of given way to grunge, but it still had that sort of alternative, rebellious, funky side to it. So you're going to hear some more of those bands coming up as we continue to explore the vast panoply of musical genres that have some, as best I can, shoehorn them into the new wave category. So that was Cockney Rebel with Make Me Smile. Check out the Duran Duran version. They've just started playing it again as part of their set. So, well, I shouldn't say just. They didn't play it for like 20 years, and they started in early 2000. They have a new album out that's doing very well. So watch for them promoting that and hitting the road. We want to thank you for supporting the show. Obviously, we're grateful to Hall Financial, Luke Nowacki, and Pinnacle Wealth Strategies and the Caju Cafe. But we're also very appreciative to those of you who have made generous contributions to keep this show on the air. Big ups to our new donor, Bernie, who very generously gave us a contribution last week. And, of course, we have some steady support from Bryant and Todd. Todd was a big fan of last week's show. If you missed it, it was quite an interesting show. We were without Sean, which is usually not a good thing.
No, it was good.
But we did have an interesting fellow on there who believes that the Whitmer kidnapping plot and the insurrection, although I don't think he would concede that it was an insurrection on January 6th, were related. And the thinking on that is, to my mind, a little tortured. But we're going to address that in just a moment. But Todd heard the show, and he said, "Connect the plots. What a great show. Too bad Darren couldn't have stayed longer." Darren, of course, was our conspiracy theorist from Revolver News. He had to go do another thing at 12:30, so he gave us half an hour of his time and took a couple points and counterpoints from Michael Bellotta, our former federal prosecutor. But we may have him on again in the future. Todd, who is a big music fan, really likes Sink or Swim from Bad Lieutenant. not as impressed with Pineapple Face, which kind of hurt me a little bit because Sink or Swim was the band put together by former New Order frontman Bernard Sumner. Pineapple Face was put out there by Revenge, which was fronted by Peter Hook, who I guess if you have to pick somebody in the New Order divorce, I'm going with Peter Hook.
That's fine.
And he still travels a lot. He plays a lot at venues around here like the Magic Bag, and most recently I think he was at St. Andrews Hall. So Hooky may be back soon, but Todd is happy to support the show, and he takes Bernard in the divorce by
thanks, Todd,
voicing his support.
I like the pivot from I love the conspiracy theorist. Oh, I like this music over here too.
From the show?
Yeah.
Oh, so if to hear that super sweet segue, you're going to have to listen to last week's episode. You can find all of our old episodes at mlsoulofdetroit.com. You can watch replays of those episodes. If you're wondering what these folks look like, you can go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel there, which is ML Elric. And of course, you can hear the full show wherever you get your ear candy. Donating to the show is super easy. You just go to mlsoulofdetroit.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see a little button. Just click that. PayPal will take your money, and they'll give us some of it, which is great. If you'd like to sponsor the show, let people know about an event or a product that you're involved in, just send us an email at mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. That's also where you can reach us with your feedback, with your comments, with your topic suggestions, with your guest suggestions. Yes, we do take guest suggestions. Darren came on after one of our listeners said, hey, check this guy out. And so we did, and we're glad we did. And you can also, of course, suggest great entries into room 7609. Please subscribe to the show. You can subscribe at ML Elric on YouTube, or you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasting. Share the show, rate the show, and give us a little bit of love if you don't mind. Marc is one of those people who was listening last week and says, hey, ML, listening to the show with Darren and Michael about the kidnapping, I was wondering, with them not being convicted, if the defendants get any kind of compensation for being held for that time after the trial. Now, Marc is referring to the Whitmer kidnapping plot defendants, two of whom were acquitted and were set free that day, and two of whom had a hung jury or a mistrial, which means there was no verdict either way, not acquitted, not convicted. And so they, according to the feds, are going to be facing trial again. They had a very high bond. They may not have even had a bond because the crime they were accused of was so heinous, kidnapping, some weapons charges. They will continue to be guests of the state until they appear in court again. And the answer is, I do not believe you get any compensation for being in, because unlike people who have been wrongfully convicted, you were just held because you faced a pretty heavy charge. And there was a case that the Free Press has written about at the time, and comparing it since then to this case, the Hutari trial, where a group of yahoos who were firing guns in the woods and saying they're going to kill cops spent 2 years or so in prison while they were awaiting trial and while they were on trial. And in the end, they were found. In fact, the judge dismissed the case because she thought the evidence against them was not strong enough to go to a full trial. They got out free, which I'm sure they're happy about, but they still lost 2 years of their life for charges that ultimately turned out to be, I guess, at least according to the judge, unsubstantiated. And I think about these guys who have been told, yeah, you didn't do what you were accused of doing, who get to go free. Boy, how do you give them their time back? That's pretty tough.
It's very tough.
I mean, now, having said that, if they'd been convicted, we'd be glad that they weren't out there doing their shit while they were free, because you see people who are convicted who get sent out for a couple weeks or a couple months before they're sentenced to take care of their business, and they go out and commit crimes. So, to me, I don't want dangerous people on the street, but when you have a presumption of innocence and you lock people up, it seems like that's a presumption they're going to be convicted, right? Because
what does the state do when somebody's convicted, but wrongly convicted, and then the technicality or the evidence changes, or they're released 7-8 years later? I mean, in extreme cases, some guys are, and I say guys, but some folks are released 20, 30 years later.
But they're getting checks now.
Yeah, exactly. So should it be that's my point. Should it be a similar deal? Because,
I don't know.
Because you did time, right? For a couple, these guys did time for a year and a half or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's what Marc is getting at too. But if you told me, hey, we're going to lock you up for a year and a half, but when it turns out we're wrong, we're going to give you, I don't know, $200,000. I'd probably just say, why don't you keep your money and let me, just be free, because I can't get that time back. But at the same time, if there's enough evidence to charge someone with a crime, and it's a serious crime, I'm not sure I want them roaming the earth. So I don't know what the hell you do in this situation.
And it's a hung jury, right?
Yeah. Well, so in that case, they may end up getting convicted, and then you can say, well, you got to prison early because we had to have the trial.
Right.
But Marc says, I can see it going either way. But for me, if I was in jail for a year and a half, I don't see any way I keep my house, get my job back, or get back to any of my old life. And if I'm innocent, it doesn't feel right for me to still lose my life for something I didn't do. He says, keep up the good work. But he raises a question that always troubles me with this, because we've written stories. My wife, Teresa Baldus in particular, has written stories about people who were charged with a serious crime, were released on bond, and went out and did some more really heinous shit. And when that happens, we all scream, why didn't somebody lock this person up? And then we have people who are locked up for a considerable amount of time that ultimately are found not guilty of what they were charged with. I mean, if there's, I don't know how smart you have to be to figure out this riddle, but I'm not smart enough to do it. But it's damn. I mean, we have a presumption of innocence, but to lock your ass up and not allow you to post bond, that feels like a presumption of guilt.
It does.
And in the end, a jury found that 2 of these guys were not guilty. Now, based on what these men themselves admitted to and were caught on tape doing, I'm kind of glad they're not living next door and just doing their thing, because they like to blow shit up. They're real hateful and they're proud of it. So I guess I'm sorry they were locked up, but I'm glad they weren't cutting the grass next to my house when I was doing my barbecue.
It's always the pride of that, you say, I don't know if they would say hate, but it's always that pride that worries you, right?
Well, I think they would admit to hate, because they were saying stuff like, I don't care, if we get caught, we got to do this. I mean, they were embracing the anger. The rage was what fueled them.
It's the pride of the rage, right? It's the belief, it's the conviction in that rage.
I might call it righteousness.
Yeah, you could call it righteousness.
They feel that the cause is just, and so, I mean, and
there's a lack of empathy in there, It's troubling.
Well, certainly a lack of civility. If you don't want to wear a mask and do all that other stuff, that's one thing, but I don't think you want to talk about killing cops and snatching a governor and throwing her in the trunk and then putting her in a boat and, starting the Boogaloo Revolution.
Speaking of masks, you see some of the stories yesterday that there were flights all over the country, mid-flight, where pilots would come on and say, hey, because they got the word from their CEO of their airline.
Yeah.
Based on the Florida ruling, the judge in Florida who ruled that the mandate had overstepped, the mask mandate had overstepped out of the White House. So people were taking their masks off mid-flight. It was really interesting to think about. And
like the end of Prohibition, they were cracking beer bottles.
Exactly, and I saw even some footage where some folks were clapping, and when the announcements were made on the flights, and it's really interesting.
Well, I've never found being masked to be that onerous. It never.
Me either.
It never felt like I was being tortured or anything like that.
It's not fun.
Or having my feet bound. But when I'm on a plane, it's a very confined space. You're sitting basically on top of somebody else. For the halitosis alone, I was welcoming the masks. And then you get the guys who turn a little fan on and they're blowing their funk in your face. I'm like, dude, forget the mask. Just put a hazmat suit on it. People who take their shoes off, can we get the CDC to say something about
people don't just take their shoes off, they take their socks off. Oh. And some people even put their, they take their socks off and then put their feet up.
Oh, so I was...
If they have short enough legs, they can do that, right?
I was flying to Australia, and I had a couple bad partners. In front of me was the Australian men's Olympic basketball team, including Luke Longley, and they're flying coach. So, all their seats were reclined. And then the guy next to me, and if you're flying to Australia, even if you have multiple legs, at some point, one of those legs is going to be 8 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
Some old geezer next to me not only takes his socks off, But then he holds them out and he tucks them into the magazine flap there on the back of the seat so they can air out, which means I now have a guy who's acknowledged I have some stinky-ass sweaty socks, who's now blasting me with the feet and drying his damn socks out in the seat in front of him while I got Luke Longley leaning back into me. I'm like, okay, and we got, another 16 hours of this?
And by the way, for those of you out there that don't know Luke Longley, he's 7 feet.
Yeah, he went from the Australian Olympic basketball team to being the center on the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen championship Bulls. He replaced Bill Cartwright. So yeah.
But by the way, real quick,
he stretches out. He stretches out.
He does. By the way, speaking of mass, real quickly, I saw something yesterday. I thought made a lot of sense. Somebody, wherever else you come down, and I get it. They weren't fun to wear. They're not fun to wear. It's a pain. Making it an issue of freedom and all that, to me, is a bit much because you're right. It's not like you're having your feet bound or anything worse. But I did see somebody make what I thought was a pretty nice point yesterday. Wouldn't it be great if we got to, as a society, where if you have a cold or the flu or, not something that's keeping you bedridden, but you don't feel well and you're kind of, and you wanted to go get groceries or whatever, you just put a mask on and that was it. And then, there are, I know there's societies in Asia that do that, but just to stop the spread of general kind of, because it's for so long, we've been in the society. I don't know if it goes back to that whole sort of idea of Puritan work ethic, but you power through whatever illness you have, and that's fine. But how about just if you're feeling a little sniffly, put a mask on for 20 minutes when you go do something, and when it's gone, then don't.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of countries where they have air pollution problems where they're wearing masks because if you don't, you're gonna be really sick. Yeah,
just as a courtesy. This is a common courtesy. And people say, "Oh, they don't work." Well, they do work. The science is there. Of course, they work.
Yeah. Now we do know that
they're not perfect.
With the most recent variant, that little bugger is so small that some of the cheap masks might not work. But I actually, with the masks that were somewhat comfortable, they were kind of a fun way to show what you like. I used to wear a lot of Spartan masks around, and I liked wearing them to the mayor's press conferences because he's a big Wolverine. So I'd always, have my Spartan mask on before I'd ask a question. And so then he would not like what was covering my mouth, and he wouldn't like what was coming out of my mouth. So it was like a double win for me.
Like so many other things, Mikey. It's just the idea when you say that you get in an argument, they don't work, they do work. Well, of course they work, but they're not perfect. They don't always, they don't work in every situation, right? And it's not going to stop 100%. But when you say they don't work, that means nothing is stopped, and that's not true either. It's in the middle. But they make. How about if you just say they make a difference?
Yes, but it may make a difference just that the flu is not as widespread. But I do go back to something that I heard very early on in one of the protests at the state capitol where a family was there who refused to wear masks, and they were telling me that the science shows that the particles are so small that the masks are not effective. Now, at that time, they were wrong. But a couple years later, when the Omicron variant comes out, we do find that anything that's not a N95 mask isn't good enough because the particles are too small. So they kind of had the right idea, but they didn't have the science behind them. And then things evolve. And I think people get frustrated because they say, you're telling me this is the way it is. And then later something changes and they go, well, so you told me before that it was this way. Now it's not that way. We seem to be holding people to an unfair standard of expecting the government and science to know everything when they don't know everything yet. So I think that's unfair, but I guess the counterpoint is, well, you're just acknowledging they don't know everything, so why should we believe and do everything that they say that we should do? Which brings me back to something I said 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, that history shows us when there's a crisis like this, the people who are the most afraid live the longest. And we're still seeing that with people who are dying from this thing, even though it's much milder, tend to be the people who aren't vaccinated or boosted. In other words, the people who are the least afraid. And I'm not saying you should live your life in fear, but substitute the word most afraid for who are the most cautious, perhaps the most courteous, perhaps the most conscientious. And I don't know if that makes a difference to you, but if you ain't been boosted or vaccinated, please don't cough in my face.
I would go for that.
Right. See, when Marc's not here, Sean and I... It's like I can't wait till we get off the air so we can have the team hug.
We're wearing Soul of Detroit stuff too.
And we're hoping to find a way that you guys can wear that soon too.
By the way, why is Charlie LaDuff's no bullshit thing right in my eye? Look at this.
He put it there.
Yeah, that's just great.
He and it's weird. That must be the only microphone that bullshit goes into.
No bullshit news.
No bullshit news on it.
Isn't that ironic?
As they say in court, we'll leave you to your proofs. Colin writes after last week's show posted, ML spectacular episode today. Your guest was right, and he's referring to the head of the Detroit FBI office moving to Washington, D.C. shortly before the insurrection. And he notes that Alan Lengel at Deadline Detroit had the scoop. We'll have a link to Alan's story on our website, so you can find that. Go to mlsoulofdetroit.com, and you'll find a link to the Deadline Detroit article, which talks about the head of the Detroit FBI field office moving to the D.C. bureau just before the January 6th insurrection. And the interesting thing about this, and I thought that Darren made some connections that wouldn't stand up to scrutiny, but one of the things that Michael Bellata, our former federal prosecutor, said that convinced him that or made him believe that these defendants were not going to be found guilty is that the feds didn't wait long enough to pounce, that they had not done enough active things to be caught basically red-handed. And I think this jury has indicated that he's probably right. Although, as we discussed last week, the jury also acquitted a guy of a gun charge when he even admitted to doing the things that made it a dead nuts lock that he did the gun crime. But so is this jury nullification? We don't know. But it is interesting if you think about it and you say, well, this guy says the FBI field office head was involved in something here, then jumped to D.C. to get involved in that. I don't really buy that. I don't think he really supported that other than by putting some names and dates on a calendar and saying, A plus B equals F. But if you think about it, Bellata says the guys investigating this moved too soon, and they pounced on these guys around the time the FBI field office guy left. I don't connect the two. I don't say one means the other, but when you see all these pieces out there, it's really easy to see how these conspiracy theories grow and how people can say, but if you look at this and then you see that. And even the guy, Michael Bellata, the former federal prosecutor, who sees no conspiracy here whatsoever, says they jumped too soon. And you say, well, maybe it's because this guy, he was leaving. This is why we have these debates, because these things, depending on how you shake them up, can lay out in different ways.
Well, he's saying you jump too soon. This is a matter of legal strategy, right? I mean, that's what that
Making
is.
the case, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Of trying to, exactly. So.
But now if you're on the side who says, well, okay, so even the guy who doesn't believe something bad happened says they jumped too soon, and I say they jumped too soon because this guy had to get to D.C. in a hurry to get involved in the January 6th insurrection, you can take even someone who doesn't believe it and use him to support your argument that there was a conspiracy. I mean, trying to unwrap conspiracy theories is crazy. And I've been to the book depository in Dallas, and I've looked down on Dealey Plaza from where Lee Harvey Oswald was stationed, and I have no problem believing that he killed Kennedy, because if you do that, it's a big looping turn, and you can track a guy for a long way before you get your shots off.
It's not that far either.
So I guess I'm saying that you got wind and
and the depositories, right on top of the plaza.
Yeah,
basically.
it's a easy look. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't believe that anybody other than John Harvey Oswald killed John Kennedy. So I guess you can discount my take on any other conspiracy, because I'm just not a conspiracy guy. And as I told Darren, as someone who's covered government for 30 years, if the government decides it's going to get somebody, there's a good chance they're not going to, because they just don't have their shit together. Eric gripes, being a respected and award-winning reporter, please learn how to correctly say names. Love the podcast. Just fix your pronunciation on Altis and Garagiola. So I hope I got it right, Eric. Finally, CW Freitas gave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and says, good show lately. We hope you feel the same way, and we'll rate the show wherever you get the show. Marc will be back next week. We appreciate Joe keeping us on track. In the meantime, Marc is enjoying a well-deserved vacation, and we did get a postcard from him that says, oh, wow, so this is what the sun looks like, because he spends all of his time here in the basement.
Good for him.
So he has been...
It helps his pasty complexion, though.
He has been freed. Yes, he's... the ring light just doesn't quite activate...
Well, it's not exactly a tanning booth down here.
No, but there's a sign that says tinfoil hat area. So,
well, there's also a sign that says the Carlos and Shawn podcast, or there used to be.
It's hidden by the Chelsea flag. So, speaking of which, what's coming up on the Carlos and Shawn podcast?
Oh, the NFL draft. We're gonna have the great Dave Burkett on. Covers the Lions for the Detroit Free Press.
Okay.
So who the Lions gonna get? Who should they get? Are they on the cusp of the Super Bowl? That kind of thing. Because it's about time for them.
I can answer that last question.
No,
they're not on the cusp of the Super Bowl.
They're not.
DCFC will be in a 10,000-seat stadium financed by people putting tin cans in grocery carts before the Lions are in the Super Bowl.
That's probably true. But the other three teams in town are
Tigers looking good?
The Tigers are promising. They got some young guys. The Wings are wrapping up. They've kind of had a last bit, as you know. You're a big hockey guy. Last couple of months here have been a struggle. But they do have a couple of, they have some fun young players. And the Pistons obviously have a fun young player who has got some buzz about him. So all I know is that for the first time in a while, there could be, you can feel it out there. There are folks that are excited that some of this young talent may end up leading to some winning at some point. And that's and it's been a while. So that's good.
We are coming out of a bleak winter sports-wise.
Yes, we are. A decade.
That's fair to say. Yeah. So take a look. You'll see Shawn at the ballparks, at the stadiums. He'll be in a press box. I'll be in the cheap seats, but we would love to see you out there. Next week, we may have a show that's all about sex and violence, like the kind with strings.
Yeah, violence.
So stick around for that. We're still trying to lock that down. Marc will be back. Shawn will be here. In the meantime, Charlie Ladoff's No BS News Hour is on every week. And, of course, every day there's a Drew and Mike podcast. So until next week, Cyrus, take us out.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say ML looks like. Others find it hard to believe and have come up with their own theories and explanations for the image.
I don't think he has a future.
My theory is it's casting a shadow from the other limb.
Could be a crackhead that got hold to the wrong stuff. And it told him to get up in a tree and play a leprechaun.
Others just came to get lucky in hopes a pot of gold may be buried under the Caju Cafe.
I'm gonna run a backhoe and uproot that tree. I want to know where the gold at. I want the gold. Give me the gold. I want the gold.